popping in their name. That's okay. They're popping in their name and email on the pledge, which is a signal to us that they're engaged. And so that's happening. I think what we've seen is for at least National Good Neighbor Day, the website, when people are linking to it, we've had several universities actually do that, from Boston College to yourself and others, where they're promoting some kind of initiative, and that's allowing people to gain some traction. We've been doing some initiatives with our local HOAs and then some city officials, because those organizations have influence to a larger audience, and trying to give them access to the free videos, to the good neighbor mindset, something tangible they can help their citizens, apply and be a part of.
Yeah. I don't want to ask all the questions. Maybe some others want to unmute and ask a question. We'll give you a chance to do that as well.
Hi, Tim. This is Chet in Columbus, Ohio. You just mentioned Boston College. I was wondering if you have can point to any other, community examples that have really adopted the holiday, and if there's any, specific programming that you can point to that has been the most successful.
There is actually goodneighborday.com in Pennsylvania. They had canceled their event because of COVID. There was another town, I did a Google News search, that had posted some content. I forget the name of the city, but I have seen the biggest movement when it has come through the municipality. For example, that event in Pennsylvania is run by that town. So when a municipality steps in, like where I live, the city of Eustis, when they are becoming a driving force behind the mindset or the idea, then the citizens may adopt it. Or same for the HOA. The term I use internally in a lot of my other work is, who are the influencers and who has the platform? So if you believe in the good neighbor movement, the question I would ask is, who do you know that has platform or influence that could help move it forward? And that's what we're trying to do, is network with HOA management companies, reach out to city officials, trying to say, hey, here's something easy you all can make an emphasis of during National Good Neighbor Day. But thanks, Chad. I hope that helps.
Yeah, thanks, Tim.
Others? Tim, you mentioned during your presentation, and I'm sorry I forgot to hit that pesky record button at the very beginning. So, old age. That's what I'll blame it on. You mentioned that on your website you're keeping a list or documenting other Good Neighbor Day initiatives around the country. Mm-hmm. How do people communicate that to you? Is there a way to do that just through the website?
Yeah, you can go to the website and just simply contact us. I'll put a form on there today for you guys too, that you can just submit something happening local, let us know, and we'll put a page just for local events and link back. And in that form, I'll make sure I put a request to ask if you have a specific page or website where that's happening. I'm going to PS something to Chet in his question. I had a group I was with recently, and they had told me that they're planning on doing like a good neighbor barbecue, where neighbors are encouraged to invite people over for a barbecue. In my TEDx talk, I talk about gathering around a table, and the Latin word communitas means the spirit of community, and it's measured by the number of meals that you share with others. Now, it's hard to invite someone to a meal that you don't know, right? If you meet a neighbor for the first time, they may not want to eat with you yet, but you do have neighbors and why not invite them for a meal during National Good Neighbor Day that whole week? But we have seen food to be an interesting draw for gathering. In my neighborhood, I live in somewhat of a rural part of Florida, so we do like to burn things in the backyard. So we have a fire pit, and inviting people over to the fire pit is really fun and easy. And people don't feel as intimidated because they're not stepping into your home, right? It's like, oh, I'm going to go hang out back. Great, I'll do that. But nonetheless, trying to invite people to something they can share together, even if it's a common place, like, hey, we're going to meet up at a local restaurant or a pizza shop and just to chat as neighbors.
I have a question. Is my sound good? It wasn't earlier on.
Yes.
Okay,
good.
Great. So Tim, you mentioned when a municipality kind of spearheads the efforts, it's a bit stronger. And I'm wondering if there were any examples of how that partnership or collaboration or initiating that effort were started with the municipality to give it some attention. And and then I kind of have a two-part little comment about food. I think food and art are some of the best ways to kind of bring people together in a less intimidating manner. I think, yeah, food and art definitely bring other cultures and people together. So yeah, that's great.
Sure. And how do you pronounce your first name? I can read it. I just want to get it correct.
I'm Naquela and I'm from Wichita.
Welcome, Naquela. You must be city planner there. Is that
Not
correct?
city planner, but I'm a part of Wichita State University. Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. I want to say, I'm going to find the link to that news article about the city who did a Good Neighbor initiative. They were making these flags available for neighbors to put on their mailboxes and in their yards that was simply, be the good neighbor. And again, I think the question I would ask is there something simple and tangible people can hold on to or put somewhere to remind them of the mindset or just the behavior of being good neighbors? And that's what I saw with, they would give out, hey, pick it up at City Hall, or it's available, at these drop-off locations like the schools or the libraries. And the city paid for those items. And it may say the city's name, and then it could say, be the good neighbor, or celebrating National Good Neighbor Day, and it's an American flag or whatever, something that people can go, easy, I'll put that in my yard, I'll hang it on my mailbox. And then it just promotes that mindset. Because I think, as you know, in marketing and advertising, what people see, they think about, right? So if you drive down the road and see a billboard for ABC, whatever, you think about it, then the store's 2 miles away and you pull in, right?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
So Tim, if you have the opportunity to dream about where you think this effort that you're putting in on National Good Neighbor Day could lead or end up, what's the ultimate goal or the ultimate dream, I guess, for you?
Thank you. I love the question. For me, the dream is that everyone everywhere would be the good neighbor by applying the mindset, which is, again, the introductions, celebrating, it's staying aware, it's being available, and where they engage with their neighbors. But ultimately, that dream is, it has to have an advocate in those neighborhoods. So we're trying to work through, I have a lady that's worked with me, she's a brilliant marketer, and we have had some in-depth conversations of the question, how do we recruit ambassadors? Because in a neighborhood, what we have found is, by nature, people may not want to be the good neighbor because they're protective. They're guarding their property, they're guarding the liability. They don't want someone to step on their property to help with a project, or they don't want to go to somebody else's. But ultimately, if we could find the good neighbor in the neighborhood as the ambassador that begins to promote these initiatives, like, hey, we're going to do a Good Neighbor Serve Day once a quarter, or we're going to do that Good Neighbor Barbecue, or we're going to, go make those signs that people can put in their yards during National Good Neighbor Week. And so we really need the individual. So everyone that's listening to this today, again, tag your it. As I said in the beginning, you can be the good neighbor right where you are, and start initiatives unique to your environment, creative to the people you live with, and offer them some way that they can make this tangible and personal. That would be my dream, is that we would have ambassadors in neighborhoods everywhere, and they're helping to propagate the mindset of a good neighbor where they live.
That's similar. I think John McKnight, asset-based community development, he refers to them as connectors.
Okay.
In a neighborhood. I think the neighboring movement out of Wichita, Kansas calls them connectors as well, maybe. It's the same idea. And just as we've been doing this class, as we hear from people across the country, I keep asking myself that, what's the ultimate goal? Maybe it's some sort of national group or national conference where you get everybody on Zoom talking about National Good Neighbor Day ideas or something like that, perhaps. just building up that national discussion, getting some momentum and push behind it. But I love your use of the word ambassador.
I think
Thank
I
you.
think that I think that ambassador term, it could be known as like a block captain. I don't know many blocks that actually have a captain just for their block, but that might be something that's colloquially more familiar. I've also heard the term animators. I don't know if that's another group in Kansas as well.
Well, maybe after 2021, maybe we find a way to get several people connected and thinking about this at a national level even more. Tim, you've certainly been a motivator and a leader in this for several years. This is not your first National Good Neighbor Day. You've been doing this for a while. So I appreciate your enthusiasm for sure.
Anytime, David. And again, I think collectively in the synergy of ideas, and then if there are some things that surface that maybe are effective, we can maybe scale it and multiply it. But I'm still an advocate of some individuality and communal, buy-in. What matters where you live may be different than where I live. I live in a very rural area, but a metropolitan area may be a little bit different. And so I'm very sensitive to that. I'm very sensitive, maybe because I did a lot of work overseas in different countries where, we can think one way in our air-conditioned conference room, but when you're in a village remotely, it's a very different application. So different cities, different towns, different neighborhoods, it may be a different application, but the mindset or the goal, good neighboring, is still the same outcome.
That's an excellent point. Yes. Well, thank you for your time, and please hang on today. We may have other questions that involve you here too. And I'm just going to end the poll real quick and show that, and then we'll move on to our next presenter. So have you done anything differently as a result of this class? Now, not everyone took the poll that's on today, but those of you that did, about 6 of you indicate you have been doing something different as a result of the class, and maybe 4 of you not yet, but aspire to. You can see in chat some of the ideas that some people are pursuing and doing as a result of that. It's always glad to hear about people being motivated or picking up ideas to put into action due to this class. That's great. Well, we're going to move from Eustis, Florida to Wichita, Kansas. Our guest there, Naquela.
There we go. I was gonna see if you
Pack.
could get it right.
I had to pause and think. With Wichita State University, she's been involved in multiple community initiatives in Wichita, in supporting youth and community engagement. She holds a master's degree from Wichita State University in public administration and a bachelor's in political science and a minor in sociology. And now Wichita State University recently accepted the responsibility of being an anchor institution and the regional engagement economic development. And I understand you're a director of that regional program there at Wichita now. I think that's correct.
Yeah, actually, it's through the Office of Strategic Engagement and Planning. And so the Office of Engagement, I'm the director of engagement through that office, a newer division with it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you've certainly been a driver in sort of cultural, educational, and economic prosperity in that area, and some of the programming you've done, and you have an interest in some ideas on this National Good Neighbor Day topic. So thrilled to have you and excited to hear what you have to share.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for these Neighboring 101. This really has been a great resource for initiatives and efforts that I had been researching and kind of thinking on. So glad to be here in this space. As he said, I'm Naquela Pack. I am from Wichita, Kansas, Wichita State University. The Kansas is only urban research institute. So I'm excited to be in this conversation. And with this division, the Strategic Engagement and Planning Office, I am honored to serve as the Director of Engagement. And we really get to prioritize and intentionally build partnerships and work alongside the community under four pillars: health and wellness, childcare and education, quality of place, and prosperity. So under that, I had been, thinking about the neighborhoods that encircle the university and how we can be a better neighbor to them. And what does that look like? So as I was kind of searching for efforts, I came across this Neighboring 101 and I was like, perfect. And then I learned about National Good Neighbor Day. And that connected me through these classes to the Neighboring Movement, which is a podcast that is out of Wichita, Adam and Matt, and I've now been connected with them and sitting on their board. So I'm really excited that all these connections came from this. So thank you, David. But so as I had been looking at, National Good Neighbor Day and what others had done, I thought, what a great opportunity. The neighborhoods, there's about 10 neighborhoods that encircle the university that I'm really focusing on and have deemed the Shocker neighborhood. And some of these neighborhoods are the residents, you could say, feel overlooked. They have not always been part of the conversation as it comes to development. And I'm sure that you would see that in a lot of locations. So Wichita isn't special in that way, but we are special in the way of how we're looking at things now and intentionally wanting to work alongside. So with this National Good Neighbor Day, I looked at Wichita State did a climate survey, and that analysis showed that there was opportunity for improvement with the satisfaction of the culture and atmosphere on campus. And then I also looked at a report, the Chung report. It came out with an article, Why Good Neighboring Matters. And there was a survey of 108 cities, and Wichita was ranked 11th lowest on talking with neighbors frequently, the 9th lowest on doing favors for neighbors frequently, and the lowest on seeing and hearing from friends and family frequently. So I thought, okay, this effort is something that can address these challenges because it appeared that, if you asked, well, what do you think of Wichita? We're in the Midwest, it's friendly, but then when you break it down to that data, it appears not to be as we perceive it to be. So I came up with, spoke with our student involvement team, some community members. I met with the neighborhood association presidents and kind of presented this National Good Neighbor Day and what can we do to encourage, celebrate, and elevate good neighboring practices. So we've come up with a Good Neighbor Bingo that we're going to be doing that has ideas to encourage that behavior. And then we've partnered with some businesses right around that if you turn your bingo card in, you can get a percentage off. So we're going to be doing that. We have a neighborhood walk that we're planning with the local, it's a Three Keys Fitness. She does workout classes. And so we're going to start at her location. We're going to walk through campus, around. The YMCA is going to be a part of that. Health Core Clinic, they're going to be a part of that. So it's really a collaborative effort where we're going to just encourage getting outside, walking with the neighbors, and also inviting our neighbors on campus because we want them to feel welcome and included as being part of the neighborhood. So those are some things that came about through this and that I'm looking into. I saw in the chat there an example of what someone was doing. I didn't recall where it was from, but they had tiers where you could get a package of like chalk and or a yard sign, and I really like that idea and think I will try to incorporate it in some way. We've also got some panel discussions taking place during the week that we're going to be celebrating. We have our Student Government Association is going to be talking about food insecurity, because where we are located, it is a food desert. So the importance of that on our neighbors, we're going to talk about that. We've got a panel going to be hosted by the United Way during that time to highlight what organizations and service providers we have in our neighborhood, and specifically Shocker neighborhood. But I think that could be even broader, if it's a citywide. So yeah, those are some of the things that we've got going, and really excited to be a part of this effort and conversation now, because I was not familiar with it before.
Wow, you're going all in. Boom. Double feed, it sounds like here.
Yeah.
Neighborhood bingo and neighborhood walks. Tell me a little bit about those two.
Yeah, so the bingo game kind of came about just because it seemed to be an easy way to encourage involvement. There's things like take a walk in your neighborhood, learn your neighbor's name and use it, go out and take some unique, beautiful photos of your surroundings from your viewpoint and then post them. There's things like take a moment to think of challenges your neighbor may be having, to kind of get outside of the maybe implicit biases we have, to think about what struggles your neighbor might have, to learn what cultures are around you is another one. So kind of just to do some actions, but also to do some thinking about your neighbors as well.
Yeah, that's a clever idea. Now, there are prizes involved or anything like
so
that?
If you turn it in, you do get the discount off at the local coffee shop across the street at Fairmount Coffee, or you can go to Three Keys Fitness and get a smoothie for $1 off. Yeah.
I'm in, but that kind of captured my attention, because really a neighborhood, no matter its size, could have fun with a neighborhood bingo contest.
Definitely.
That would get the kids involved as well, or potentially. Then
sure.
Love that idea. So any other questions from the group?
Naquela, I'm sorry, I probably butchered your name.
Naquela, no worries.
Naquela, sorry. I would like to know more about the podcast that you mentioned briefly. What is it the same sort of stuff that we've been talking about in 101, or what's like the conversations that you guys have?
Yeah, so David is probably a little bit more familiar as I'm learning. The Neighboring Movement is a podcast from Adam and Matt, and they talk about neighboring and the movement that they're doing. They've got an 8-door challenge where you learn your neighbor's name around you. And yeah, they just tell stories about neighboring. So we're doing interviewing or speaking with their board members. And so I was recently on there with them, and they just share ideas of what they've done, what others are doing. So very aligned with conversations that are here.
They put a lot of emphasis on asset-based community development.
That's true.
And that approach. So they've interviewed John McKnight several times, and I'm not sure exactly how long they've been doing the podcast, but they have a new episode every week, and they've interviewed some very well-known people and some lesser-known people. I was on there a couple of months ago, so I guess I would be one of the lesser-known examples. But it's good. It's a good listen. Any other questions?
I wanted to bring up something you had mentioned about in the walk, spending time to get to know some of the other cultures or some of the other neighbors. I really like that idea of trying to get to know neighbors you're not maybe commonly around. We have had that situation in our community where you have to step out of the community, but ultimately sometimes you tend to judge people more when you're far away, but when you're up close, you understand more the differences, and that's what makes them a good neighbor where they live. Can you speak to any of that? Like, has there been any engagement maybe for some people that aren't as close proximity neighbors to new neighbors? Because I know that that's always a challenge we face, that we can get in our own little bubble, like, okay, my neighborhood is good, but I'm not going to go there.
Right. Well, so the neighborhoods that are encircling the university that I'm intentionally building with are very diverse neighborhoods. So you do find where people feel more comfortable around people that look like them or have, interests that they do. So it is a very intentional approach of building relationships and encouraging to try new things. And that's where, I was mentioning the food and arts are really great ways to bring those other cultures together, because it's a bit less intimidating. Everyone needs to eat at some point, and art is sometimes a fun way to also bring differences together.
Tim, I discovered in my own neighborhood a gentleman a few houses down who was always, when he was out in the yard, always looked like he was mad about something. And I'd never really been able to have a conversation with him. And then about a year ago, my wife had an interaction with him walking the dog. The dog peed on the telephone pole that was in his yard, and he yelled at her about getting the stupid dog out of her yard. Now, I have a 10-pound beast. He's a 10-pound Shih Tzu, so he's not going to hurt anybody, but obviously he had a problem with dogs. And so my first thought was to go down and have a not so nice conversation with him about yelling at my wife. But then, because we were on this neighboring push, I got his contact information, called him, and invited myself down for a cup of coffee on a Saturday morning. And I discovered in the course of that, he's a 3-time Purple Heart recipient. He's had wounded multiple times in Vietnam, and he loved to talk about that. And he loved to talk about trout fishing, which I could take or leave, but he loved that. And now I've got 2 connection points. When I do see him out, he still doesn't speak to my dog, and he still has a sign in the yard that says, "Keep your dog out of my yard." But at least if I say, how are the fish biting at Roaring River Park, we have something to talk about. So it is a more pleasant way to pass by his house.
David, that's great. If I could add a PS to you on that we have noticed, I have a phone on my cell phone. I have a contact that I share with neighbors when I meet them. So I simply say, "Can I text you my cell number? I live right around the corner. If you ever need anything, let me know." But what I got in exchange was their cell phone number. And then on the notes field of my cell phone, I use the hashtag method. So I have a hashtag neighbor. So I can open up my contacts and search hashtag neighbor, and all my neighbors pop up. But when you share your contact info, that neighbor who doesn't like your dog, I promise you, when he needs something, you'll be the first person he calls.
I love that idea. I'm going to go in and change my contact field right now.
Well, I created a contact just for my neighbors. So it says Tim and Cheryl DeTillis, our home address, my cell phone number. So it's only to my neighbors, and I share that contact with them.
Very good. I love that. Great tidbits. Well, from Wichita, Kansas, we move back the other direction to Paducah, Kentucky. Melanie Reason is a neighborhood planner and community developer with the City of Paducah, and she's looking to expand the neighboring programs there and wanting to implement a Paducah Neighboring Week. Mm-hmm. So, Melanie, what have you got going on in Kentucky?
Can you hear me okay?
I can, yes.
Great. I am so excited to be here. I have been following along with the Neighboring 101 series. This is the first live one that I've managed to get to, so I'm happy I actually made it to this one. So I am a neighborhood planner with the City of Paducah. Paducah is a river town right on the Ohio River, population of about 25,000 people here, so a very small city. We say it's the biggest small town that you'll ever go to, that you'll ever live in. We all know each other, but despite being only 25,000 people, we have 50 neighborhoods that we serve. So some of them are small and some of them are much larger. But we are serving 50 different neighborhoods in we have the city divided into 8 different regions. So what I'll share with you a little bit of the background, because you guys have kind of discussed a little bit about getting your municipalities on board. So not every city has someone who's devoted to neighborhoods. Neighborhoods is in my title. So we had a mayor who championed neighborhoods and understood that when a city makes a commitment to neighborhoods, that is both a commitment of time, of investment, and it's a commitment to the stability of a neighborhood. And so when you have good neighbors, when you have good neighboring practices, you create stronger neighborhoods. And so we had an administration that understood that value. And so this position was created a couple of years ago. It didn't always exist. Most cities have a community development aspect. They have housing. We do different kinds of development projects and transportation planning. Not everybody looks into neighborhoods in that way. And so we're unique to have a neighborhood planner, someone devoted to neighborhoods. That's not all I do, because I wear a lot of hats. We have a small staff, but that's one of the bigger things that I do. I have an entire work plan devoted just to neighborhoods. The way that our plans have worked. So I'm going to walk you through how we got to Good Neighboring Week. This position was created a couple of years ago. Our mayor was really invested in neighborhoods. She started an initiative of neighborhood walks. And so she and the city manager here walked every single neighborhood. And they did surveys, which was like, I feel safe in my neighborhood, 1 to 5. My neighborhood is clean. My neighborhood I have access to parks. And so asking these questions on these neighborhood walks. And as the mayor and the commissioners and the city manager would walk these neighborhoods, they would also pick up trash. They would have it was highly publicized. We'd have a meetup spot. And so we as a group from the city would go into the neighborhoods, and it's a way for the city to meet neighbors where they are. And so we picked up trash, we asked the questions, we had a map with us. So it was a community engagement exercise where they got to draw on the map, show us where, there's litter problems, where there's, loud dogs, the traffic is too fast. And one of the things that we noticed is that everybody kind of has a lot of the same complaints. So cars are too quick. There's litter. There's always one bad house or one bad neighbor that people want to, complain about. But a lot of it is really centered around providing services that benefit neighbors. And so where we went with that is we are looking at redevelopment plans, putting together neighborhood plans. We focus kind of in, Naquela said she had 4 different pillars. We have different pillars, but same thing. We're going by buckets. So like connectivity, I can walk to a park. I have sidewalks in good repair. I can get where I need to go using on foot, by bike, by car, or using public transport. Some of the other buckets that we look at in developing neighborhoods and strong communities is neighborhood vitality. So my neighborhood is safe, it's clean. Beautification is another bucket, and so it goes on from there. So we're putting together these plans and these revitalization plans, and the first thing we started was a neighborhood beautification initiative. So we've taken an entire region of the city. So kind of like Naquela's neighborhoods, we have a section of our city that has been a little bit disinvested. And so we're looking to bring that neighborhood into the fold and to say, we haven't forgotten about you. You do matter. All neighborhoods matter. And so we're doing an 8-week beautification with our public works department. And so there's 8 neighborhoods in this region. And so we're doing a beautification initiative once a week for 8 weeks, all summer long. So we're about halfway through. And that is what happens in that cleanup effort is that we have reached out to community partners. We are this is kind of an older lots of older neighborhoods. In this, we do asset-based community development, looking and seeing what the strengths are in those neighborhoods, and what happens to be strong in this neighborhood is a church network. So we're partnered with our local faith-based institutions to help us get the word out. They have half of their neighborhood in their congregation every Sunday. It's an easy win for us. And so is distributing our information about how to use the beautification services, where do you put your trash, how do you get your brush picked up, where, if you have tires or a mattress, like where do you take it? And so using the assets in the neighborhood that already exist to help us with our programming has been really successful. We are, the way that it culminates is like through the week, we have neighbor to neighbor volunteering. So we're introducing this idea of neighboring as an act. So not just like living next to someone makes you a neighbor, which is a noun, but neighboring as a verb, like how do you neighbor? And so we're piloting this through this 8-week beautification. We've had incredible partnerships through our faith-based institution, housing authority, local financial institutions. We have University of Kentucky, our extension service. Let me think who else. A couple of community-based organizations, strengthening families and stuff like that. And they're all coming out. We all gather together at the end of the week after the beautification is complete. Everyone has done their neighbor to neighbor volunteering. We've helped get brush to the curb so it can be picked up. We've helped Granny down the street get that couch out of her house that she couldn't haul off. We've distributed flyers on what to do with your junk cars. And so on Sunday, we all get together at a local, wherever we've assigned for the neighborhood, and we do a Sunday celebration. And we're doing more community engagement as part of this process. Our ultimate goal is to create these neighborhood plans, these neighborhood development plans. And our theme for our neighborhood development plan is every neighborhood has a future. And so we're theming our engagement that way. And how do we help them build the neighborhood they'd like to see using our 5 buckets of ideas. And so as part of the research for putting together neighborhood plans, stepping into a role as a neighborhood planner, we came across Neighboring 101 right here. And I had never even heard of Good Neighbor Day until I saw your webinar with the people from Midland, Michigan. And I thought, what a great idea. We can do that. We can totally do that. And so that was when I pitched the idea to my staff and we pitched it to the administration. It fell right in with what we're doing. And so what that will look like for us is a week-long initiative. So we're going to do Paducah Neighboring Week in September, the week of Good Neighboring Day, September 28th. And so we're going to partner with our library, our parks department, and then in the city. And so for us, I think we're going to start slow. Like I said, our staff is small. The entire planning department is 6 people for the entire city. And so our plan for this year is going to be, it's going to be an iterative process. So we'll start with putting together a neighboring toolbox, housing resources for neighbors on our city website. So I love the idea of the neighboring toolbox. David, you have some great resources. It seems like Tim might have some resources to share. And so I really wanted to upgrade our website on the city to make it neighborhood focused. If you want a good example of this, Springfield, Missouri has a phenomenal website, and their entire planning department website is neighborhood focused. And it's on this idea that great neighborhoods have 3 things in common. They're clean, they're safe, they're friendly. And so their entire website is built around this idea of neighborhood vitality. And so I wanted to update our website and change the language and create a home for these neighboring tools to live. And so that's part of our process leading up to Good Neighbor Week. Another thing that we're going to do is, hang on, I have a list here so I didn't forget. We wanted to, so putting together the neighborhood toolbox as part of the neighboring week, we're gonna do a city score. So how does your neighborhood rank in certain factors for vitality? And so we're gonna make public our stats. How can you see how we're tracking it? And then how do we exchange ideas on how to make it better? So a place for continuing feedback and engagement. And so we're creating this direct link between the municipality and these neighbors. So we're gonna be using neighboring guides, like how to throw a block party. We have a really cool thing in our parks department. It's a rec mobile. They've taken a van and they've converted it into a rec mobile, and it has all of the fixings for a block party inside. And so you call up the parks department and say, hey, I want to throw a block party. Can I rent the rec mobile? And we'll drive it out and you can have all of the stuff inside of the rec mobile to use. So these guides on like, how do I do a tree planting? What is the process for public art? How do I throw a block party and what resources are available to me? So creating these guides to neighboring and positioning these services in the envelope of our neighboring, which is kind of how we want to change the focus of the messages that we're sharing. So everything kind of is under this umbrella of neighboring. And then let me think. My end goal, sure, reshape the 5 buckets: connectivity, beautification, vitality. Oh my gosh, what are they? Give me a second and I'll tell you at the end. I'll pull them up. But the end goal is to possibly have a neighborhood advisory council. So other places have this. And so this is where we build the organizational capacity across the city to really, I'm building an army of neighbors. And so I want every neighborhood to have a future. I want every neighborhood to have a plan. I want every neighborhood to have leadership. And then I want every neighborhood's leader to have a direct link into the city. How do we make decisions that affect you? How do you have a voice? How do you make your voice heard? How do you make your voice stronger? How do you bring your neighbors together? And so putting all this together as a package. So I think Neighborhood Advisory Council might come later. So I imagine that will not be a 2021 plan, but hopefully by 2023, we have the resources to do citywide Neighborhood Advisory Council, where it'll be citizen-led. They meet independently to set their own agendas, but we want them to work with the city staff on their topics. And then, they can bring things to us on behalf of the neighborhood. And so less formal than maybe a mayorally appointed board, but still a way to connect directly with the city. So kind of, like I said, an iterative process that we've been working on for a couple of years. So pleased to have stumbled across this Neighboring 101, and it has brought a million good ideas. I am an idea person, and I could add on 50 more things, but keeping it brief, we're going to do that. And our Neighborhood 101 ideas of Neighboring Week is going to lead us into something really big and really great.
Wow, Melanie, you may have a small staff, but you guys have got 100 different things going, it sounds like.
We're strong.
Kind of all channeling in the same direction. So for Neighboring Week, it's not one and done for you guys. It's a stop on the road for all sorts of other neighboring things. So
yes, and creating that neighbor focus.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
And I just want to say that I love that you mentioned Springfield, Missouri, because you probably don't know that's where I'm located.
I did not know that. I love the website there. I took that website and pitched it to my administration and said, this is what I want to do.
And the safe, clean, and fun emphasis is just a new emphasis from what it had been in the past because of some of the things we've been talking about here. So
I love it. And I'm using it as my own. It's mine now.
That's great. That is great. Well, go ahead.
Let me answer the question. There were five buckets. It's neighborhood vitality, recreation, economic development, housing, and then connectivity and infrastructure. And so those are kind of the 5 areas that we're looking at for neighborhood plans.
Any other questions for Melanie?
Melanie, hi, this is Tim again. I'm also on the idea spectrum. Let me just share something that you sparked that I really love is we're trying to utilize National Good Neighbor Day as like New Year's Day, right? It's the launch pad for the rest of the year, right? And so that Neighboring Week becomes the launch of a bunch of stuff. Yes. And so our phrase after National Good Neighbor Day is every day is a good day to be a good neighbor, right? And so it doesn't end on National Good Neighbor Days, but every day is a good day to be a good neighbor. So just want to pour gas on your passion with that, where if you have an emphasis week, leverage it and then use it as a launch pad for other initiatives. And there may be other holidays we're trying to brainstorm in our community where the city may already be spending budget. So whether it's 4th of July, you have a good neighbor booth set up. And there's the guide or the toolbox, as you mentioned, becomes a resource. Hey, go to the good neighbor booth, get some resources to reach, help your neighbors and what have you. And
that's
then
a great idea.
You mentioned the faith-based community. The same may be true. Like in October, some of the faith-based community does those like trunk or treat or fall I forget what they call them. You could offer them an opportunity to have exposure for some of the Good Neighbor Toolbox resources, because wherever there are families or people that are trying to make their neighborhood safe and friendly and connected and all that, they may grab those resources and then be able to apply them.
I love that idea. It has not occurred to me to go on location in a booth at events, so I'm glad you said that. I can absolutely do that. It's a great idea. Done.
Yeah, as a PS, our town, the city of Eustis, hosts George Fest in February, and it's the second largest celebration for our first president, George Washington. So it's really a great avenue, since the crowd's already gathered, right? It's expensive to pull people together, but if they're already showing up for some festival or whatever, pop the Good Neighbor in the middle of it.
Yep, I love that.
That's a great recommendation,
Yeah.
based on experience. That is great. Well, great things happen when you get people together and they have ideas and they ask questions. It's been great dialogue today. And of course, we hope it doesn't stop here. If you're in this class or those that are registered for it, we'll get a link to the video recording from today's class. That should be out tomorrow, and I'll include in that the links from the chat that different people have shared as well. And hopefully that will help continue keeping the conversation going. And Tim mentioned, of course, on their website that they like to document what other people are doing around the nation for National Good Neighbor Day. You may be able to glean new ideas from what other communities are doing and be able to find them on that website. Would encourage you to do so. So I think this was mentioned earlier in a different phraseology. Tim has some really great phrases, nuggets of wisdom that he shared here today. But it's a blessing to have a good neighbor, but it's even greater thing to be a good neighbor. So let that be your focus as we march out of here to be a good neighbor. And we'll meet up again next month when we'll be listening in on a interview that I was able to do with Dave Runyon, who authored Art of Neighboring. The video will only be available in the class here, and then we'll have some organized dialogue around that presentation on how to be a good neighbor. Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Yes.
Great job. As usual.
Appreciate it. Good to see everybody. Tim, thanks again for joining us.